He invited his barren ex-wife to his perfect wedding to gloat. Then a limousine door opened, and 3 matching giggles cut the music. If raw, high-stakes family truths are your thing, quietly tap like and subscribe to Not So Perfect Family 365. Then buckle up, because she didn't crash the wedding, she crashed the narrative. The water off the Hamptons looked like glass, expensive, indifferent glass that reflected a sky too polite to cloud over anyone's big day. Our limousine slid to the curb as if it had been taught manners. Miles squeezed my fingers once before the door swung open. "Ready?" he asked. "No," I said, and stepped out anyway. 3 identical giggles popped like champagne behind me. Our daughters Aria, Nova, and Lark tumbled into sunlight in yellow dresses Miles said made them look like buttercups. Heads turned in a ripple I could feel across the marble drive. A woman in a fascinator whispered to a man with a jaw like a yacht. Someone else said my name as if testing whether it was allowed to exist in daylight. Naomi Brooks. The hotel had that smell rich places have, cut flowers and air money bought. A bellman in white gloves smiled tight enough to crack and ushered us through revolving doors into a lobby built to echo. I could hear laughter from the ballroom like a party the ocean itself had RSVP'd to. "Mom," Aria said, tugging my hand, "are we the surprise?" "Kind of," I told her, "but we'll use our inside voices." Miles adjusted his tie and leaned close. "We can leave whenever you want, I mean that." "I know, I did, that was the problem. I knew what love was now, and it made the old kind look like a counterfeit bill. Good enough to pass in a dark room if you didn't hold it up to the light." A sign on an easel pointed the way to the Morrison-Hale wedding. Morrison, as in Serena. Serena with the doe eyes and the laugh that used to come through our walls when Damon said he was working late. The venue coordinator directed us toward a table glittering with calligraphed cards. I scanned rows of names that read like a donor wall until I found my own. Table 27 near the service doors, of course. Miles saw it too. They put us in the airlock. "It's fine," I said. It wasn't, but the woman I used to be would have tasted blood and called it lipstick. Today I just slipped the card into my clutch and reminded myself that dignity fits anywhere. The ballroom was a garden someone convinced to grow inside. Chandeliers like captured constellations, roses folded into clouds, waiters left and right ferrying golden flutes. Damon's friends wore suits with the ease of people who never had to worry if their rent cleared. I recognized 2 from photos, men who had slapped his back in pictures he'd posted when he opened his 3rd shop with my money and his smile. He was across the room, of course. The eye of the day's weather. Damon Hale in a tuxedo that fit like memorized scripture, teeth catching the light, his hand light on Serena's waist. He saw us before he decided how to react. For a second, just the length of a breath he'd deny later, his face emptied like someone had pulled a tablecloth and the glasses hadn't fallen yet. "Is that?" a bridesmaid breathed. "Triplets," someone answered as if naming a species. Serena's eyes traveled over me, landed on the girls, and softened. She lifted her hand in a small wave I could almost believe wasn't edged. Damon's shoulders squared, the performance resumed. "Naomi," he said when he reached us, the syllables polite and brittle. "You made it." "You invited me," I said. "We're punctual." Miles offered his hand and Damon took it because men like Damon are fluent in optics. "Miles," my husband said, "good to finally meet." "Likewise." Damon's gaze slid back to the girls. "They're wow. They have names," Nova announced. "Aria, Nova, and Lark. I'm Nova." "Congratulations," he said to me, the words shaped around pride he couldn't claim. "You look different." "Healthy," I said. "It's a new thing I'm trying." A microphone popped at the far end of the room. The MC, sleek, smiling, born for this, tapped it twice. "Ladies and gentlemen, if I can have your attention for just a moment. Our groom would like to say a few words before we seat for dinner." Of course he would. Damon mounted the little riser with the ease of someone who thinks a spotlight is a birthright. He thanked people with the grace of memory and money, tossed a joke about Serena's patience, another about how long it took him to grow into the man who deserved a family. Laughter, glasses chimed. He glanced at me as if by accident. "And sometimes," he said, voice dipped in honey, "life takes the long way to give you your legacy." Legacy. The word slid under my ribs like a cold knife and found every place it had ever been before. Doctors' rooms. Silent bathrooms. Nights I folded baby clothes I never needed and hid them in drawers like shame. Miles' hand found the small of my back and stayed there. I watched Damon take his bow, watched the room look at him like he'd invented devotion. "Mom," Lark whispered, "is it sitting time?" "Almost, baby," I said, and I knelt to smooth her dress like I had anything else in this room I could smooth. We made our way to table 27. The service doors breathed warm kitchen air at our backs. A busser smiled at the girls like we were real and human. I set my clutch beside my bread plate and for a second let my eyes close. In the dark behind my eyelids, I saw a Tuesday night years ago, his voice syrupy against my ear. You're investing in us, in our future, and the way I'd believed him with my whole body. I opened my eyes. The room glittered. My hands were steady. I reached into the clutch, past the lipstick and the travel-sized hand sanitizer, and touched 2 pieces of paper I had printed before we left Chicago. A bank transfer showing $18,750 leaving my account for his partner's LLC, and a note in his own handwriting where he'd scrawled, "Thanks for staking us. Our future starts now." I folded them once, twice, and slid them deeper, the way you sheath something sharp you plan to use precisely. Tonight, the story would stop behaving. 6 years earlier, Atlanta in July pressed its palm to the small of my back and guided me everywhere I didn't mean to go. Damon found me at a neighborhood block party off Edgewood, white t-shirt, jaw set like a quarterback, laughter that made women look up from their paper plates. He called me Nee before he knew me, and somehow it didn't feel like theft. He had a boy with him, 4 years old, curls like a question mark. "This is Owen," Damon said, lifting him with one arm. "Say hey, little man." "Hey," Owen said, shy but curious, the way kids are when they're deciding if you're a forever person or just a passerby. He held out a sticky hand. I shook it like we were closing escrow. We went fast like summer does. By August, we were talking furniture. By October, my toothbrush lived at his place. By Christmas, a ring melted the rest of my hesitations. Our wedding was small and sweet. My mother Evelyn humming through tears, Damon's friends loud and loyal, Serena absent but present in the way certain names float when no one says them. He said co-parenting, said healthy boundaries, said don't make it a thing. I tried not to. I tried to learn Owen's favorite dinosaur and how his eyes squinted when he read picture books. On Wednesday nights, I made mac and cheese from scratch and pretended love could salt the places that hurt. The good parts were real. Damon taught me to two-step in our narrow kitchen, palms on my hips, steam from shrimp and grits fogging the window. He'd tuck me in when my migraines came, rubbing my temples with thumbs he swore were magic. On Sunday mornings, he'd press a coffee into my hand and kiss my forehead like I was the answer key to a life he'd been guessing at. The other parts were real, too. The first time he compared me to Serena, it was soft as a compliment. "She never burned rice," he said, smiling, scraping the bottom of the pot. "But this is still good, baby." I laughed. It was harmless if you looked at it sideways. Then came other small comparisons, how she handled school forms, how she didn't make everything a discussion, how her mama knew when to keep out of a man's business. Little beads on a string I didn't notice until it choked. We weren't trying for a baby so much as we weren't preventing it. A year slipped by, then another with calendar apps and vitamin bottles lined like soldiers on the counter. I peed on sticks and held my breath while tiny windows decided who I was. Negative, then negative, then negative again. Damon's laugh shifted. "I mean, I already know I can," he'd say, kissing Owen's hair as if that were data. "So let's focus on your side. No blame, I'm just saying." I made the appointment. The clinic smelled like lemon and fear. The nurse had kind eyes. The doctor spoke in numbers that pointed like arrows at normal. The ultrasound tech said, "Everything looks great," with the kind of cheeriness you use around people who need permission to exhale. I came home with a folder of proof. Damon skimmed it like a menu. "That's good, baby," he said, thumbs racing across his phone. "So keep doing what you're doing. Maybe you could book a checkup too," I tried, just to be thorough. He looked up like I'd broken something sacred. "Nee, don't insult me. I got a whole person walking around with my dimples." "It's not an insult, it's science." "It's attitude," he snapped, then softened the word with a smile like a band-aid. "You're stressed. That's half your problem. Let me handle things, you just relax." Relax became the commandment. Don't bring up expenses. Don't ask about late nights. Don't mention Serena's text that lit his screen after midnight. Don't talk about the boutique hotel on his statement, the one he said was for a vendor meet. Don't be the woman who makes men tired. When I wasn't quiet enough, he'd sigh, long and saintly. "I need peace, Naomi. My days are war. The least you can give me is peace at home." Most days I folded myself into the shape of peace. Some days I didn't fit. One night after the shop closed, he came home humming. "Big ideas," he said, kissing the top of my head like I was a plant he watered weekly. Second location, a detail bay with ceramic coating, white glove pickup for Buckhead. "Vic thinks we can blow this up if we move fast. Do we have the cash for that?" "We will, don't block the blessing." He set his phone on the counter and went to shower. It buzzed, skittering toward the sink. I shouldn't have looked, so of course I did. Vic's name lit up with a stream of messages, percentages, a sketchy LLC name, phrases like front money and clean on paper. The call came through on speaker before I could move my hands. A man's voice filled the kitchen, bright with liquor and certainty. Yo, you working wifey yet? You said she's good for it. Damon's muffled voice floated from the bathroom. Relax, she loves the dream. Love don't open shops, Vic laughed. If she can't give you a name, she can at least give you seed money. The shower ran. My heart did not. I stood there with the lemon-clean smell of a kitchen that looked like our life on Instagram, and I listened to two men calculate me like an asset column. The steam curled out from under the door, warm and human, and something I would spend years trying to unlearn. The shop started bleeding hours in January. Damon came home smelling like tire shine and apologies, dropping receipts on the counter like confetti from a parade no one attended. Vic says the neighborhood's changing, he told me, cracking open a beer with his ring. The money's up north, people want concierge service, ceramic coating, pick up and drop off, white glove, not this nickel and dime walk-in mess. So pivot, I said, not everyone has to be Buckhead to deserve clean. He smiled like I'd said something cute. Pivot needs capital. There it was. We sat at the table, we bought secondhand and sanded together. The wood scarred like something that had survived and refused to pretend it hadn't. Damon spread a sketch of a second location across it, arrows, circles, a rent number that made my scalp prickle. Vic's found a bay off Roswell Road, he said. Landlord's desperate, we lock it now, we get half off build out. We add 2 mobile vans, premium packages, subscriptions. Baby, this is how we stop living invoice to invoice. I watched his hands move. Damon could sell a drowned man a faucet. What's the number? I asked. Start up. He threw it away like it was nothing. 50, but we can piece it. 20 now gets us in. I can borrow against equipment for the rest. How much do we have? I already knew the answer. We had a hole where his contribution should have been. Damon exhaled hard through his nose, then leaned in tender. Nee, you've been saving since you were 19. I know you got something. I'm not asking for forever loan, just a push. Stake me, stake us. I'll sign whatever. I'll put it in writing the way you like. It should have felt like respect. It felt like a man offering you a seat on your own chair. How much, Damon? He looked at me like he was measuring how much he could say without making the truth an accessory to the crime. 18, maybe 19. We'll call it 18,750 and I'll make the roundup with tips by Friday. I swear. 18,750. The exact number in my savings, down to the lonely 50 I'd kept from a bridal return in case the bus ate my transfer. I stared at the sketch until the ink turned to ants. I'll think about it, I said. He reached for my face, thumb against my cheek like I was a volume knob. Don't think us to death, believe with me. His voice softened. I want a future I'm proud to bring our kid into. That arrow hit everywhere it ever had. I heard myself say, if I do this, there are rules. Anything. Ed quick, right M. No cash, I said. A bank transfer from me to the LLC with a memo, capital contribution to second location. And I want a note from you, your handwriting, acknowledging it's an investment, not a gift. He didn't flinch. Done. At the bank, the fluorescent lighting made everything look like a warning label. The teller, a woman with nail art like tiny constellations, read the numbers back to me twice. Are you comfortable with this? MS Brooks. I'm making an investment, I said. The word rang like a bell I hoped would summon something other than regret. The transfer confirmation printed out in ugly little type. $18,750 to Hale and Vic Auto Detail LLC. I folded it into thirds and slipped it into my wallet beneath a photo of my mother at the diner, all apron and hope. That night, Damon came home with hydrangeas and a new softness. He wrote the note at our sanded table, slow like penmanship mattered again. Thanks for staking us, Nee, our future starts now. D. He dotted the period like it could hold. He kissed me the way he used to when we were all beginning. He left for the shop humming. An hour later, my phone lit up with a voicemail. His voice filled the kitchen, syrup and sunrise. You're investing in us, in our future, he said. I won't forget it. I love you. You made me the luckiest man alive. When I saved it, I didn't know why. Maybe I wanted to hear him promise a thing I could press play on when the house went dark. Maybe I knew promises evaporate unless you trap them in amber. The next week turned into lists. I drafted everything he asked for: vendor accounts, a budget skeleton, a sample menu of services with romantic tears Damon named like a DJ, platinum shine, legacy coat, father-son classic. I told him the last one made me itch. He told me emotion had no place in pricing. He started coming home later. Soft launch, he'd say, holding up takeout I didn't ask for. Networking, Vic knows guys. Then bring Vic to Sunday dinner, I said once. He laughed. You don't want Vic at your table, he eats ambition for dessert. On Friday night, I baked a sheet cake for Owen's school fundraiser. Damon was supposed to carry it in the morning. At midnight, the pan still sat on the counter. My texts bounced into the void where his read receipts used to live. At 12:43 a.m., my phone buzzed, a text from a number I had in my contacts but rarely used. Vic, we good, got the 18. $75 from her route to wallet tonight. Keep the LLC clean. Don't worry, the paper says gift. I forwarded Vic's text to my email, printed it, slid it into a manila envelope with the bank transfer and Damon's handwritten, "Our future starts now." Paper felt heavier than truth. It didn't argue back when I doubted myself. He came home at 1:17 a.m., scrubbed raw by cold air and excuses. "Soft launch ran long," he said, kissing the top of my head like I was a kid who'd fallen asleep on homework. "Vic texted," I said, his eyes flicked. "About what?" "Percentages, a wallet, keeping the LLC clean." A half beat. Then the pivot, "Why are you in my texts?" He set the takeout down a little too hard. "That's the energy that makes a house unlivable, Naomi. Suspicion, you want a baby, you think cortisol helps. I want honesty. I give you everything." He moved closer, thumb on my cheek like a sermon. "Your job is to believe we're a team." I nodded because arguing at 1:17 a.m. was how you lost even when you were right. He softened, hands sliding to my shoulders, grip just a shade firmer than affectionate. "I need peace," he murmured. "Be my peace." He slept, I didn't. At dawn I booked a second opinion at a different clinic because if I couldn't fix the man, I could at least take the temperature of my own body again. The doctor smiled at the charts like they were a surprise party. "Everything is within range," she said. "Hormones, imaging, ovulation. If conception isn't happening, the next step is a partner evaluation." "He says he already has proof," I said, a little laugh escaping like static. A whole person walking around with his dimples. The doctor's face didn't change. "A semen analysis is about the present, not the past." At home, I put the pamphlet on the table with a yellow sticky, "It's both of us or it's neither." That night, the pamphlet migrated to the trash. "Stop creating problems," Damon said gently, like a man who brings you flowers to your own funeral. "We're blessed, don't beg the devil to notice." So I did the only thing I could think to do that didn't require permission. I started writing. A cheap spiral notebook from the Walgreens on Boulevard, blue lines, red margin. Day 1, I am not crazy. I wrote what I said and what he said and what time he said it. I wrote what I cooked and whether he ate it and what his phone did while we were supposed to be us. I wrote down the little grabs, wrist, elbow, shoulder, that left no photographs and the way I told myself he was just excited, just emphatic, just tired. On Thursdays, I made lemon pepper wings the way he liked, with extra zest and too much butter. On Fridays, he networked. On Saturday mornings, I found business cards in his pockets for men I Googled and could not find. I pressed them between notebook pages like leaves. The credit card statements had gone paperless the year we got married. "Trees," he'd said, and I'd felt proud to be married to a man who cared about forests. Now I asked for logins because the light bill had threatened to go dark. He sent the password with a heart emoji. I logged in and saw the numbers that build a story when you line them up. Gas, vendor supply, 2 separate Uber charges at 2:03 a.m. and 2:12 a.m. for the same route like someone got dropped off somewhere that wasn't home. And then a name I didn't recognize because I never had a reason to, the Hazel at Highland. $268.41, stay plus incidentals. Same night I'd roasted catfish and folded napkins into triangles because he liked triangles and said squares felt institutional. My phone still held a photo of that table, waiting like a loyal dog, 2 plates that never met mouths. I scrolled further back. The Hazel again, $312.09, room service. I clicked the itemized receipt because the portal let me. Omelets at 7:11 a.m., 2 mimosas, a romance amenity I couldn't even bring myself to read past the R. My stomach made a small, rude sound. I checked my camera roll. There I was that morning, my face puffy from crying about nothing and everything, texting, "Are you safe?" His reply an hour later. Late night vendor meet, crashed at the shop followed by a praying hands emoji like punctuation. The girls at the front desk at the Hazel probably smiled at him the way girls do when men tip and declare themselves tired. Maybe Serena had posted a story that night, a glass clinking in a dim bar with a location tag that vanished after 24 hours. I didn't need Instagram to translate what my stomach already knew. I printed the statements. The printer coughed, jammed once, spit the paper out like it, too, was tired of my hope. I slid the receipts into the manila envelope with the transfer and the note and Vic's text, the cardboard swelling like a mouth learning new words. The door handle rattled. Damon's key turned. He stepped in humming the way he always did when he thought life would move out of his way. He kissed my temple, dropped his jacket on a chair, and glanced at the table like nothing on it meant anything. "What's for dinner?" he asked, easy as a thief in daylight. I looked at the envelope, at my hands, at the pamphlet face down in the trash. "Catfish," I said, "and a question." He smiled in that patient, pastoral way that says he loves a woman best when she doubts herself. Ask, he said. And then, from the pocket of his jacket thrown over the chair, a hotel key card slid out and tapped the floor, white, embossed, a cursive H that matched the charges on my screen. The key card hit the tile like a cymbal and kept ringing in the part of the brain that remembers every time you were told you were overreacting. Damon didn't look down. "What's your question?" he asked, smile staying on like a porch light no one turns off. I bent, picked up the card, turned it so the H stared back at both of us. "Did you forget this or just leave it as a scavenger hunt?" He tusked, as if I were the one who'd been careless with the truth. "Vendor comped a room after a late night. I crashed. You want me driving dead?" The Hazel itemized omelets for two and a romance amenity. He blinked once, and then he did what he always did when cornered. He moved the walls. "Why are you checking my statements? You want a baby, Naomi. You can't be bathing your body in cortisol and suspicion. It's ugly. It makes you ugly." I set the card on the table beside the envelope of papers and said nothing, because somewhere in my grandmother's blood was a woman who knew silence could be a mirror. He waited. The mirror wouldn't lie back for him. He reached, slid the card into his pocket, and changed the subject with surgical precision. "Owen's got a spelling test. I told Serena I'd help with words tonight. You good? You think I'm going to smile and say sure after that?" He sighed. "I think we're adults. I think we don't blow up over nothing. I think you either trust me or you don't." The next morning I woke to a bouquet of tulips and a text that said let's reset. I made coffee and nearly convinced myself I was dramatic, neurotic, catastrophic. Every word women get handed when men run out of new ones. He kissed my temple like a benediction and left whistling. I baked lemon bars for Owen because fourth graders still believe sugar can fix most things. At 3:11 p.m., a process server with a beard like a pine tree buzzed our door. He asked for me by my full name as if there were a courtroom in his throat. He handed me a manila envelope with the weight of a bad dream. Petition for divorce. Damon came in at 5:20 smelling like expensive soap and a plan. He saw the envelope on the counter, nodded like the weather had finally done what he'd predicted. "It's for the best," he said, loosening his tie. "Best for whom? For both of us. You're miserable. I'm walking on eggshells. We're stuck in a loop. Serena and I," he stopped, corrected. "Owen's schedule works better when I'm not pretending." My mouth opened and closed around air. "Pretending to be married or pretending to be decent?" He said softly. "Let's be adults. No lawyers, no scorched earth. You keep the Civic, I cover the lease until it's up. We just call it. And the money?" I pointed at the envelope of papers, the transfer, his note, Vic's text, the Hazel statements. "The $18,750 you said was an investment. The note in your handwriting, the voicemail." He shifted his weight like he'd been standing too long in shoes that didn't fit. "Gifts don't get returned. You wrote our future starts now." "And it did," he said, shrugging. "Just not with you." I laughed, one sharp sound that tasted like a cut. "You can't rewrite a ledger with poetry, Damon." His eyes went flinty. "Careful," he said. "You think anyone's going to believe you over me? You're emotional. You've been trying for years. People know what that does to a woman. There are sentences that brand you. That one sizzled into my ribs. "Get out," I said. He frowned, genuine confusion like I'd refused a glass of water. "This is my place." "No," I said, surprising us both. "It's a place I paid for while you wrote futures on napkins. But sure, keep it. Keep the couch and the dishes and the bed you brought strangers to. I'll take what you didn't touch." He tried to touch my arm as if we were still something you could soothe. I stepped back, his hand closed on air. The look that crossed his face was small and mean, a weather system I'd been living under so long I forgot it had a name. "Don't make this ugly," he said. "It already is." I packed in an hour because when your heart cracks, efficiency leaks out of you like a second language. 2 suitcases, a laundry basket of essentials, the manila envelope, the lemon bars I couldn't leave because Owen had counted them. I took the photo of my mother at the diner from the fridge and slid it between shirts like a holy card. He stood in the doorframe while I zipped my life. "You're really doing this?" he asked, as if he weren't the one who'd invited the end to sit down and eat. "Do what?" I said. "Leave you to the legacy you wanted." He had nothing worth saying or maybe too much. He stepped aside. I dragged the suitcases down the hall that had learned the sound of our fights. Outside, the Civic blinked like a loyal dog. I loaded the trunk. As I closed it, Serena's SUV pulled in. Owen jumped out with a backpack and hope. "Aunt Nee," he shouted, because that's what he'd called me before anyone told him words had borders. He ran into me so hard my breath left like a bird's. "Hey, little man," I said, swallowing whatever wanted to spill. "You ready to spell Wednesday wrong forever?" He showed me a list of words on a crumpled worksheet. "I can do because now," he said. "Because." "That's advanced," I said. Serena approached slow, eyes flicking to my suitcases, then to Damon behind me, then back to me with something you could misread as pity if you were generous. Everything okay? She asked, voice daytime TV soft. Everything's honest, I said. She nodded once as if she respected that answer. Then she put a hand on Owen's shoulder. Say bye to Miss Naomi, we're late. Owen's mouth trembled. But lemon bars. I pressed the foil packet into his hands. Emergency rations, I said. He grinned through the confusion, because 9-year-olds know the shape of love even when you hand it to them wrapped in tin. I drove without music because there are nights sound is an insult. I didn't head to my mother's yet. Pride makes detours. I checked into a budget place off the interstate with carpet that tried its best, and a front desk lady who called everyone sweetheart like it was policy. In the room's yellow light, I set the manila envelope on the laminate desk and stared at it hard enough to catch fire. My phone buzzed. Unknown number. I let it go. Then another ding, Tasha, the girl who'd braided my hair for the wedding and told me not to marry a man who loved mirrors more than windows. Tasha, you didn't hear this from me. Screenshot attached. It was Damon in a group chat I wasn't invited to. Vic and 2 guys with names like warning labels. Damon, all swagger and bullet points. Parlayed a dummy's nest egg into 3 shops. Legacy season now, watch this flip. My mouth went dry enough to strike a match. I stared at the words until they smudged. A second bubble from Tasha. I'm sorry, Nee, he's been saying stuff I couldn't not show you. Somewhere under the motel AC's drone, a new noise rose. Faint, metallic, stubborn. It took me a second to realize it was the sound of a woman dragging the blade of her rage across a whetstone until it sang. I drove north with the radio off because silence was the only thing that didn't take sides. Somewhere past Gary, the sky turned the color of old pennies, and the Civic started clicking like it had opinions about my life. By the time I pulled into my mother's block in Chicago, the streetlights were humming, and the snow along the curb wore soot like eyeliner. Evelyn opened the door in a robe and church socks, blood pressure cuff velcroed crooked on her arm. She smelled like Vicks and cornbread and the kind of love that knows your middle name when you've forgotten it. Naomi June, she said, like a sentence and a verdict. Then she folded me up until my ribs felt lined again. You hungry? I'm tired. Those aren't mutually exclusive. She stepped back to look at my face. Lord, you got that hollow look. Sit, I got greens. Her kitchen was the same, minus the laughter. A pill organizer sat where the cookie jar used to be. She poured me tea and didn't ask questions until I had swallowed something that wasn't regret. Tell me the headline, she said. Marriage over, I said. Money gone. She nodded once like she'd been waiting for a storm that finally introduced itself. You staying? For a minute. Then we'll be a minute together. In the morning, she put on lipstick-like armor and we walked the 2 blocks to the diner. Signs still read Evelyn's Place, but the E had shorted, and now it just said Vlin's like it was stuttering. A chain threaded the door handles. Through the glass, the booths looked like napping alligators. Dust hung in the sun like a confession. I closed it after the second dizzy spell, Mama said, trying to make it sound like a business decision and not a surrender. Wasn't fair to nobody to feed them food cooked by a woman who might pass out stirring. You could have called me. You were married? She said it gentle, which somehow hurt worse. We stood there like mourners until a voice behind us said, Mind if I film the exterior? I'm cataloging neighborhood stories, the ones nobody's funding but everybody's living. He had a camera on a strap and eyes that didn't flinch. Tall, khaki jacket, knit cap with a palm dangling like an apology. He smiled at Mama first. You her daughter? He asked me. I'm whoever keeps the rain out. I said. He grinned at that. Miles. Naomi, I said, not offering more syllables than necessary. Your mom's place has real bones, he said to me, then turned to her. Ma'am, you can see the care through the glass, the way the counter curves, how the chairs wear on one side. You can tell regulars had favorite spots. I could do a small piece on it, no cost, just proof it mattered. Mama preened a little despite herself. You hear that, Nay? This white boy got taste. I'm black, Miles said, laughing, but I'll take the compliment. We let him shoot the sign and the door and the hand-lettered closed for now taped crooked inside. When he finished, he handed Mama a card that just said Miles Carter, documentary, and a phone number that looked honest. You from here? I asked, more brusque than I meant. From places like here, he said. I bounce around. Someone hires me to tell a story, I tell it. When nobody hires me, I tell it anyway. The pipe above the doorway picked that moment to cough up a bead of brown. It swelled, trembled, then let go. Water hit the concrete with the resignation of a person who knows no one's coming. Main's not shut right, Miles said. Got a valve in the basement. Behind the boiler, Mama said automatically, then touched the chain like she touched a scar. Keys at the house. Hold my camera, he told me, like I was trustworthy, and jogged back toward his van. He returned with a wrench and a flashlight and a roll of plumber's tape. If we pop the hasp, I'll replace it with a new one. I'll buy the lock. Promise I'm not a thief unless you count stealing your good graces. I didn't have spare grace. Still, I slid the chain and let him shoulder the door. Dust shifted in a smell that made me think of hash browns at 6 a.m. and napkins folded into boats. We clomped downstairs into cool concrete. The valve turned with a groan like it was getting out of bed too fast. The drip upstairs slowed, then stopped. "Thank you," Mama said to his back. He wiped his hands on his jacket. "You want me to wrap the joint while I'm here? It'll hold till someone who knows what they're doing comes." "Do you know what you're doing?" I asked. "I know how to hold a flashlight," he said, "and I can make a neat mess." He wrapped, taped, tested. The pipe held, back upstairs. He surveyed the place like a medic deciding if a patient was a fighter. "You could do grab and go out of here," he said. "Folks keep telling me they want decent food fast. Not greasy, not $15 for sadness, something that feels like a favor." "We don't have money for permits," I said reflexively. "You have a name people already trust," he said, nodding at the sun-faded sign. "And I got a camera, some stories by their own endings." I wanted to hate how easily he said hope. Instead, I felt it climb the back of my throat like a cough. At home that night, Mama measured her insulin. I watched the plunger with a panic I tried to hide. "You rationing?" I asked. "I'm managing," she said. "My doctor says stress is worse than sugar. I can pick up an extra shift somewhere." "You can pick up your life," she said, not unkind. "I've been poor with style since before you were born. Don't start treating me like a stain you can scrub." I washed the dishes to buy time. She dried, which felt like church. "If love doesn't feed you," she said finally, "let it starve." I opened my mouth to say I would. She waved it away. "I'm talking about the kind you got to beg for." Later, after she went to bed and the apartment went quiet in that way old buildings do, pipes ticking like gossip, radiators hissing like old ladies, my phone buzzed with a bank alert, $37.42 balance. I laughed without humor and checked the mailbox to punish myself with bills. The slot coughed out a coupon book, 2 envelopes with windows, and 1 thick city letter stamped in red. I carried them back to the diner because denial has a route it likes. Under the awning, I tore the big one open. "Final notice, tax sale scheduled in 21 days" glared up at me, all caps pretending to be polite. A date, a time, an auction that did not care about our history or Miles' talk about bones. The paper shook in my hands. Upstairs, a light flicked on in the apartment above the storefront. Down the block, Miles locked his van and started toward me, hand up in a hello. I didn't wave back. I held up the letter like a prophecy. "Can a camera stop a sale?" I asked when he got close enough to see my face. He looked at the notice, then at me. "No," he said, "but sometimes it can start a fight." We started with bleach, elbow grease, and a lie we told the city in our heads. "We're not open, we're recovering." Miles set his camera on a milk crate and pulled tape off the vinyl floor in long, satisfying snakes. I scrubbed the counter my mother had wiped 1,000 mornings, the laminate surrendering its sticky past inch by inch. "What are we calling it?" Miles asked without looking up. "Not Evelyn's," I said. "That's hers. I need a name that doesn't flinch when life does." He waited. He was good at that, holding space like a bowl. "Gather," I said finally. "Not fancy, a verb, something people do when they're hungry and hopeful." He nodded slow. "Gather clean, feels like a table already set." The logo came on a napkin, a circle that was a bowl, and if you looked again, a table seen from above. 6 little marks at the rim for chairs. Miles filmed my hand drawing like it was. I sold my wedding china to a woman who bargained down and still smiled sorry. With that cash, I bought 2 second-hand fridges that wheezed but cooled, an industrial blender that sounded like a helicopter, and a used prep table with knife scars you could read like Braille. I ordered compostable bowls in bulk, and stood in the alley with a Sharpie labeling samples. Brown rice plus greens plus lemon tahini. Pasta plus chickpeas plus cherry tomatoes. Sweet potato plus black beans plus avocado. Mama tasted from a plastic spoon and made a face that meant she was trying to find something to insult because praise scared her. "Lemon wants more friends," she said, then took another bite. "But I'd eat this and not feel guilty at God." "High praise," I said. Miles filmed the back of my hand holding a spoon, then the steam lifting from a tray of roasted broccoli, then my mother's mouth tightening so she wouldn't smile. He never made me repeat a moment. If he missed it, he let it be missed. At night under the kitchen lamp, I opened my laptop and learned the language of survival. Unjust enrichment. Promissory estoppel. Constructive trust. I read cases with women's names who could have been cousins, money passed from heart to household, men calling it gifts when courts asked for the paperwork. I printed anything that felt like a handrail, and underlined the parts that didn't assume love is an audit-proof entity. Miles caught me once with a highlighter cap between my teeth and 2 tabs open, Illinois cottage food law and Georgia, recording conversations. He set a mug by my elbow. Studying like finals, he said. Trying not to be stupid twice. Being in love isn't stupid. Funding a man's myth is, I said, then softer. I kept receipts this time. The tax sale notice ticked down from 21 days to 19 in my head whether I was awake or not. The city wanted what it was owed, diabetes wanted what it wanted, time wanted all of it. We needed money yesterday. I wrote a list on the butcher paper we'd taped to the wall. What we have, a closed diner with a name people still say like a prayer, a camera, a hand that can cook. What we need, permits, a plan, a miracle that can pass a health inspection. Miles pointed at the camera line. I can't pay the tax, but I can tell the truth loud. He cut together 2 minutes. My mother flipping the old open sign over with her thumb as if to remind it how, me chopping parsley in rhythm with the radiator hiss, a close-up of the sign's missing E. My voiceover, places like this don't just sell food, they sell ordinariness with dignity. We're trying to bring it back in a way that keeps us alive. He uploaded it with a caption that didn't beg, just asked. People came, not floods trickles. A nurse on her way to nights bought 3 bowls for later for after bodies. A sanitation worker in a neon vest said, You Evelyn's daughter, she gave me free coffee when my partner died. Gimme 2 of what won't make me nap on my route. A teacher counted crumpled dollars and said, My kids will eat the avocado if you call it butter. I wanted to climb over the counter and hug everyone until we both couldn't breathe. We didn't swipe cards yet. We put a tip jar out with a handwritten sign. If you can't pay today, write your name and pay when you can. No shame. Mama called it bold. I called it remembering who we were serving. At night, I watched the videos view count creep like Ivy and read anonymous comments that were kinder than most families. I also checked the Hale and Vic LLC filings out of a meanness that felt like self-care. With a library card and tenacity, you can learn how anyone builds their castle. Articles of incorporation, sloppily done. Operating agreement, cribbed from a template, names misspelled twice. Bank liens, 1, lawsuits, none public. I scrolled until my eyes hurt. You okay? Miles asked from the doorway, camera off for once. I want to build, not burn, I said. But sometimes scavenging is how you get wood for the fire. He came and sat without touching me. His presence was a blanket without weight. Build first, he said, then decide who you need to be to keep it. On day 4, a man in a lanyard introduced himself as an inspector and told me the city could talk about a temporary permit if we met them halfway and stopped pretending we didn't know rules existed. Everyone's broke, he said. Don't make me the villain. We're trying not to, I said. Tell me what to fix in what order. He walked the space with a pen and mercy. Mop sink, hand wash signage, thermometers in your cold hold, and get that vent hood cleaned unless you want me to pretend I didn't see it. I can clean, Miles said behind me. You can pay a guy who does, the inspector said. And Naomi? Yes, sir. Your mama fed this block for 20 years. The city can be cruel, but it ain't blind. He left me a list and a card with his cell on it. It felt like a truce you earn with sweat. That night, after we scrubbed the hood until black turned silver and my shoulders throbbed like I'd been rowing out of a storm, my phone buzzed with a number I knew by shape from a life I was quitting. Tasha, you still mad at me? I stared at it until the dots stopped pulsing. Me, depends why you're texting. A beat, then another. Tasha, FYI Damon's partner Vic sued him once. Small claims first, then something bigger. Filing says partnership dispute. It got sealed, ask me later why I know. We flipped the open sign like we were daring the day to argue. Miles filmed my hand doing it, one smooth turn, a click that sounded like a seatbelt before a wild ride. Mama stood behind the counter in a cardigan with holes at the cuffs and said, Lord, keep our food from burning and our pride from talking. I priced the first menu like a dare to the economy, $5 bowls if you brought your own container, $7 if you didn't. People walked in because the door was open and we looked like a yes. Construction guys. A nurse in Crocs with a name badge that said Isabella, RN. 2 teenagers who counted coins on the palm of a hand and blushed when I said, You're good. Isabella ate standing up, phone propped against a water bottle, filming herself the way you do when the world wears you down and you want to show it didn't win. Y'all, she said between bites, eyes shining in a face that had seen too much fluorescence, this bowl from Gather is $5. $5. And it tastes like hope and lemon. She tagged the neighborhood. She tagged local hashtags. She tagged the price again for emphasis. When she left, she said, If you see a stampede of scrubs, my bad. Also, thank you. By noon, the video had 100 views, then 400, then a number I didn't know how to carry. Nurses came, then teachers, then a man who said he worked nights at the Amazon warehouse and needed something that wasn't a vending machine or regret. We ran out of roasted sweet potatoes at 1:13 p.m. Mama cussed soft and holy. Miles restocked ice like a man working triage. The tip jar filled with singles and wrinkled blessings. People paid double and told me to keep it. When someone couldn't pay, they signed the IOU sheet in careful block letters like they were co-signing their own dignity. At 3, the inspector reappeared, bought 2 bowls, and pretended not to look too hard at our thermometers. "Trying," he said, mouth full. "I can work with trying." The tax sale clock still ticked, but now it sounded less like a guillotine and more like a metronome. We moved to its beat. I slept like a person being chased and woke like one being called. On day 3, Isabella's video jumped the neighborhood fence. A lifestyle blogger with hair like a commercial reshared it with a caption that made me sound like a saint and a disruptor. Orders came in like weather sudden. General inevitable. I didn't check Damon's feeds anymore, but Tasha did. She sent a screen recording with no commentary. Damon at a ribbon cutting, Serena holding the scissors, Owen looking everywhere but the camera. A comment underneath, "When are y'all franchising?" Damon replied, "Soon. Legacy only expands forward." I turned my phone face down and chopped cucumbers until they looked like uniform decisions. We hired 2 part-time moms who needed cash and schedule mercy. Renee, whose little boy loved dinosaurs, and Kiana, who could stack lids faster than most people think. I paid them what we could and promised what we couldn't yet. We put a whiteboard in the back labeled wins and wrote small ones like scripture. Sabrina came back twice in one day. Truckers sent 2 friends. Mama laughed so hard she had to sit down. Miles kept filming. Not the pretty parts only. The spills, the burn on my wrist shaped like the state of Ohio, the time the blender refused to blend, and I cursed a machine like it had cheated on me. He never asked me to rehearse hope. He let the day rough me up and caught the part where I stood up again. On a Wednesday that started gray and never quite found a color, the dish pit backed up and the tickets stacked and the girls from the clinic ate on the curb because there weren't seats enough for all the need. I stepped outside for 3 breaths. The alley smelled like onions and winter. The light went watery at the edges. I grabbed the dumpster with my left hand and the air with my right. "Naomi," Miles said, voice far and then near. His hands were on my elbows. Hey, sit." "I'm fine," I lied, sitting on a milk crate because dignity doesn't catch you when gravity forgets its manners. The world took a second to choose a speed. My stomach did one slow somersault, then another. "You haven't eaten since coffee," he said. I ate a tomato. "That's not a food group." He handed me a piece of bread like communion. "Chew." I chewed. The bread tasted like everything I hadn't admitted. The dizziness let go. From inside, Mama yelled, "Miles, the broccoli's staging a mutiny." He squeezed my shoulder, kissed my forehead quick like he'd asked permission in his head and got a yes, then ran back in. The rest of the day shrugged and kept moving. We cleaned like penance. We closed like a prayer. After, when the floor shone wet as a lake and the walk-in hummed like a creature that couldn't sleep either, I found myself in the tiny bathroom off the office staring at a box I'd bought from the corner pharmacy for a reason I refused to name. The test blinked at me like an accusation. I read the directions, as if my body had become a bureaucracy that might reject my application on a technicality. I did what it told me to do and set it on the sink, and watched the second hand of my watch like it had the authority to declare anything true. 2 lines bloomed. Clear. Unapologetic. I sat down on the closed toilet and let my laugh leak into tears, or my tears rise into laughter. I couldn't tell which way was up. The cheap bathroom fan tried to take the sound and couldn't. My hands shook like they had a secret that wanted out. I found Miles at the counter counting change and pretending not to nap. "Hey," I said, and my voice sounded like a person whose life had just changed in a bathroom that didn't deserve it. He looked up. Straightened. "You okay?" "Maybe," I said. "If I say a thing you can't fix it, you can just hear it." "I can hear like a champion," he said. "I'm pregnant." Didn't whoop. He didn't say a Hallmark line. He just took one breath that dragged something through him, and then he smiled so soft I almost missed it. He came around the counter slow, like I was a deer with 100 reasons to bolt, and put his hands on my shoulders where they fit like they'd been measured. "Okay," he said, tears already there, ridiculous and beautiful. Okay. "I'm scared," I said, and the word hung in the air like a light. "I know," he said. "We will be scared together." We told Mama in the booth by the window where she'd cracked 1,000 jokes and 2 marriages. She stared at me as if I'd confessed to stealing the moon. "You sure?" she asked. 2 lines sure. She put her hand over mine, palm warm and dry. "You wanted this once so bad you stopped wanting anything else. Don't punish your heart because it still knows how to ask." The clinic could take us in the morning. Didn't sleep so we wouldn't scare it away by dreaming. At 9:10 a.m., an ultrasound tech who had seen too much hope and too much grief squirted warm gel on my skin and smiled at the ceiling like she'd been instructed by God not to break bad news in a whisper. "Let's meet your kiddo," she said, moving the wand like a divining rod. A sound filled the room, fast, certain, like a bird trapped in a church. "There you are," she said. Hello, heartbeat. Miles' hand crushed mine. I cried again like I was practicing. The tech frowned a little, then tilted the wand, then pressed harder, squinting at the screen the way people look at their own names when they don't recognize the handwriting. Okay, she said slowly. So that's one. One, I repeated, dizzy with relief. And that's two. Two, Miles squeaked, voice not quite his. And she tilted again, smiled wider. The kind of grin you get when you've been waiting to deliver a punchline the universe wrote. That's three. Three what? I asked, dumb with joy and math. 3 heartbeats, she said, tapping 3 distinct seashell swirls on the black and white galaxy. Triplets. Miles started laughing like a man who had been holding his breath for years and finally remembered how. I started laughing too, because terror and wonder are cousins, and sometimes they show up to the same dinner wearing the same dress. Pregnancy with 1 child is a project plan. Pregnancy with 3 is a coup. My body unionized overnight and handed me a list of non-negotiables. More water, less standing, naps like treaties. The clinic printed a packet with words like high risk and selective reduction that my heart refused to read. Miles bought every pillow Target sells and still looked like he wanted to build me a nest out of cashmere and bubble wrap. At 12 weeks, we learned what the universe had ordered. 3 girls. The tech printed out 3 fuzzy moons and wrote A Area B Nova C Lark in Sharpie. Mama clutched the photos like they were lottery tickets. God don't play, she said. Chin up at heaven, she argued with often. He just shows off. Gather became a choreography. Miles put tape on the floor where I was allowed to stand here for no more than 5 minutes. There only to wave at regulars. Renee and Kiana started calling themselves the aunties and bullied me into a stool behind the counter. The inspector came back, eyed my ankles and said, "If I see you lifting a pan, I close you out of spite." He handed me a list of prenatal resources he printed from a city website on his own time. We added a tip line to the jar, Naomi's Bedrest Fund. People stuffed it like they were paying me back for every cup of coffee my mother had refused to charge them for. A postal carrier in shorts in January slid a 20 across the counter and said, "My route's longer when you're closed." A UPS guy announced, "Put me on a standing order," and taped our menu inside his truck door. Isabella recruited half her shift to gather before we gather, and they did, rolling out with bowls under their arms like diplomas. Miles kept filming, but quieter now. He'd capture my hand rubbing my belly in the walk-in because it was cool in there and the girls were kicking hot. He filmed Mama thumping a stubborn jar lid with the back of a knife and scolding God under her breath. He filmed the morning the snow came sideways and still a line formed coats. Scrubs. A teenager in a prom tux who said his date wanted healthy first. I tried to be sensible. I failed often. I'd sneak up to slice lemons until Renee clucked. "Sit down, boss," she'd say. "Your board of directors will fire me if you drop." Also, profit share meeting at close. Profit share what? Kiana grinned. We took a cut of tips and started a jar for us, for when school starts and daycare laughs at our budgets. You said we make this place like church. Church has a benevolence fund. I felt my throat go tight in the best way. "Okay," I whispered. "Okay." The girls rehearsed being sisters with my kidneys as practice stage. At night, when sleep came with conditions, Miles would lie with one ear to my stomach and narrate like a sports announcer. "Area is running a clinic on the left," he'd murmur. "Nova, classic overachiever, is occupying the middle with no regard for traffic. Lark is a night manager who is not impressed by your bladder." Mama pretended not to be terrified and packed a hospital bag like a woman who's done a war. She labeled everything in Sharpie, phone charger, snacks, extra patience, then sat on the edge of my bed and confessed at a volume that could only be called prayer. "If I go before they get teeth, make sure they know I had a laugh. I want to be more than a photograph." I squeezed her hand until the tremor eased. The clinic moved us from every 4 weeks to every 2, then everyone. My chart thickened like a novel no one wanted to read at once. I learned the names of our nurses and the names of their children. One afternoon, a resident asked if he could sit in. "You'll remember me," I told him, as the lady who said no students and then said yes because your shoes are nice. He stammered thanks and took careful notes as if my body were a lecture he'd be tested on. At 29 weeks, I scared everyone by contracting like I was auditioning for an early curtain. The nurses strapped on monitors, the resident learned to be useful, and I learned the prayer that goes not yet, not yet, not yet. After magnesium, the devil's own beverage, they slowed. The doctor said, "You have to rest." Non-negotiable, and Mama said, "Hear the doctor who sounds like your mother," and Miles said nothing, just cried in the elevator where he thought I couldn't see. We closed for 2 days and put a sign up that didn't ask for pity. Back Thursday. Babies training me to delegate. Renee ran the line. Kiana ran the anti-jar. Miles ran between the store and my bedside, editing on his laptop with the sound off, letting the footage remind me why sitting still was work too. At 34 weeks, 3 tiny humans arrived in a blur of light and beeping and choreography that felt like Grace in Scrubs. My last thought before they swallowed me was a single ridiculous line: "We can never afford college." When I woke, there were 3 cries, not in unison, an echo, an answer, a coda. They brought them one by one: Aria serious, Nova loud, Lark thoughtful as if she had notes to give. "Look what we made," Miles whispered, forehead to mine, eyes spilling. I used up a lifetime of tears in 10 minutes and felt rich. The first weeks were a soft siege: NICU alarms, pumping schedules, the algebra of ounces and minutes. Gather learned to run without my hands. Mama learned to nap sitting up. Miles learned to hold 2 babies while burping a third with a foot. The aunties rotated through our apartment with casseroles and gossip, and a willingness to fold laundry that made me propose marriage more than once. At night, when the girls finally threaded their breaths into something like sleep, I scrolled because quiet is loud when you've been lied to before. Tasha texted sometimes at 2 a.m. Not guilt now, just weather reports from Atlanta. He's talking franchise. He's leasing a Porsche he can't spell. Serena looks tired. I put my phone face down and inhaled Lark's hair and told myself the past was a museum I didn't have to revisit. 2 months in, the video Miles cut of the Diner Together story blew past our block. A local station called, then a regional blog. We said yes carefully, faces mostly out of frame, bowls in focus. Orders came from places that didn't know our winter. We packed dry mixes in paper bags and wrote just add lemon in Mama's handwriting. Someone from a grocery chain emailed, words like pilot and shelf space dangling like fruit. On a Tuesday, while the girls napped in a tangle that made my heart argue with my lungs about who got to swell more, an email slid into Gather inbox from an address that looked like a fake name. Subject: "You don't know me but you should see this." From truthwhenot@protonmail.com. I almost deleted it because motherhood had taught me a discipline about strangers and their emergencies. The preview line caught me like a hook. "Thought you deserved the facts about a man who said he doesn't need doctors." I tapped. Inside were 2 attachments. The first was a blurred photo of a bill from a clinic I recognized by logo if not by geography. The second was a scan dates, codes, patient name printed clean. Billing statement, male factor evaluation. Patient Hale Damon. The room didn't tilt, it clarified. Outside, a siren wailed and then stopped as if even the city wanted to hear what I would do next. I stared until the words separated from the man I used to love and became what they were, ink and proof. Aria hiccuped in her sleep. Nova sighed. Lark smiled, a dream I wasn't in. "Hello," I whispered to the screen, to the past, to the ledger that had always been quietly balancing itself. "There you are." By the time the girls could say lemon, without turning it into Yemen, the bill with Damon's name on it had migrated into my envelope of evidence, like a moth that found the porch light. I didn't know who truthwhenot@protonmail was, and I didn't need to. I wasn't going to parade a stranger's medical privacy like a trophy, but I also wasn't going to ignore the fact that the universe had slipped me a receipt with his name and a line item that had ruined 6 years of my sleep. We were doing Sunday the way God intended, Evelyn making too much food, Miles wrangling bath time with Lark while Aria and Nova argued about which stuffed animal most deserved the high chair when Mama's phone rang. Unknown number. House rule. We let it go to voicemail during dinner. She started to, then frowned like the sound itself was familiar. "Hello," she said, soft but ready to throw it. The room's air changed. She set the spoon down and pressed the phone to her ear the way people do when they want to hear the end of something. "MMHM," she said. "Oh, does he now? Well, isn't that rich?" Miles looked at me. I looked at the window as if the glass might translate the tone. The girls clapped for no reason. Toddlers clap when thunder happens. Mama covered the receiver. "It's Damon," she said, the name sour on her tongue. "He asked me to pass along an invitation." "To what?" I asked, though some part of me already knew the punchline. "His wedding," she said. "To Serena. He says it would mean a lot to have you there to celebrate his growth." The girls dissolved into a chorus of party, like we'd said cake out loud. Miles raised his eyebrows like the world had finally run out of ways to surprise him and was rerunning the pilot. I held out my hand. Evelyn gave me the phone, her eyes doing that thing where love and rage take turns blinking. "Hello, Damon," I said. He cleared his throat, softened his voice into the version he uses when microphones are nearby. "Naomi. It'd be mature of us, you know. Closure, shows we're all good." "All good doesn't require an audience," I said. "What do you want?" "Just come," he said. "It's at the Caldwell Hamptons. Serena and we want to demonstrate a new chapter, And I'm grateful, for your early support. I'd love to honor that. A picture flashed in my head, the seating chart with my name by the service doors. I could hear his grin through the phone, the performance revving, the part where he thought I'd arrive humble and leave smaller. You sure you want me there? I asked. A beat, then he doubled down. Absolutely. All right, I said, calm as a ledger. Then I'll see you. He exhaled like he'd won a game that hadn't started. Great, Serena will be thrilled, dress nice press. I always do, I said, and hung up before his charm could look for a place to land. I put the phone down like it was hot. For long 30 seconds nobody spoke. The radiator clicked like a metronome that had just remembered its purpose. Say the word, Miles said finally. We don't have to go. We're going, I said, surprising myself with how steady it sounded. I'm not walking in there to prove anything to him. I'm walking in to prove something to me. I can stand in the same room as the lie and not make myself smaller to fit it. Evelyn leaned on the counter, eyes sharp in a face that had premium softness reserved for my children only. You sure this ain't about revenge? If it were, I said, I'd bring a banner. I'm bringing receipts. I tapped the envelope on the fridge, the transfer, the note, the voicemail copy I had with counsel's blessing, the innocuous clinic statement I wasn't planning to show but would keep in the deck to remind me I hadn't imagined the past. Facts don't scream. They sit still. That's their power. Miles nodded, slow like a man taking vows. Then we go together, he said. We don't split the party in hostile territory. Hostile? Mama snorted. It's a ballroom, not a battlefield. Same difference, Miles said. Different appetizers. We practiced, not speeches, breathing. Miles stood in front of me and said everything I was afraid someone else might, just so I could hear the words in a room where I was loved. She couldn't give him a child. I'm a mother to 3. He built that business himself. He signed a note that says otherwise. Why dredge this up? Because someone invited me to the dredge and handed me a mic. When the girls went down, we sat at the table with cups of tea we didn't drink. There's a thing that happens when you're gaslit for long enough, I said, not because Miles needed the lesson, but because I needed to hear myself say it. You start asking permission to tell the truth. You start applying for honesty like it's a grant. He slid his hand over mine. You don't need permission, he said. And if Ugly tries to RSVP, we'll dress it in facts and send it home without a favor bag. We booked a hotel near the venue not because we wanted the zip code, but because I wanted my daughters to nap in a place with thick curtains and a lock I controlled. Miles made a list titled things we pack that feel like armor and wrote ridiculous and true items under it. Snacks, extra tights, Aria's frog, Nova's frog that she says is a dragon, Lark's insistence. The note, the transfer, patience, chapstick, bail money, JK Naomi. Evelyn fussed over outfits like they were spells. She chose me a dress that felt like understatement with a spine and ironed it within an inch of its life. Wear the green, she said. You look like an answer in green. I was lacing my shoes when my phone buzzed. Tasha. We hadn't spoken much since she sent me the group chat where Damon called me a dummy and my savings a parlay. I'd forgiven her with the kind of forgiveness that leaves the door unlocked but wedges a chair under the knob. Tasha, can you talk? Me text. 3 dots blinked, disappeared, blinked again. Then, Tasha, he asked me for your number last week, said he wanted to make peace. I said no. Then he sent me $500 for the kids' braces. I didn't even ask. I felt, I don't know, I sent it, I'm sorry. My jaw did that thing where it wanted to be steel and jelly at the same time. I sat on the edge of the bed and read the line again. I sent it. The girls were in the hallway debating jurisdiction over a sticker book. Miles came out of the bathroom tying his tie and stopped when he saw my face. What? I handed him the phone. He read, exhaled through his teeth, looked at the ceiling as if it might have suggestions. Do you need to not go? He asked. I shook my head. Sharpened. The invitation felt different now, not generous or even theatrical strategic. Damon had triangulated me through the weakest limb left from that old tree and paid for the privilege. Okay, I said to no one and everyone. Then we go. And this time, nobody else gets to dial me in. The week before the wedding, I took my envelope to a lawyer who kept a bowl of butterscotch on her desk and a poster on the wall that said facts aren't rude. Pro bono clinic hours, fluorescent lights, chairs that punished hesitation. Her name was Adrienne. Her nails were short and unbothered. Show me what you want to show the world, she said. I slid the bank transfer, the handwritten note, the voicemail transcription across the desk like I was setting the table for a very particular dinner. I did not slide the clinic bill. It stayed in the envelope like a sleeping dog. Adrienne skimmed, then read, then reread, head tilted like she was listening for where the paper changed its mind. Okay, she said. The transfer is clean. Memo says capital contribution, not gift. The note is, well, it's a Hallmark card that accidentally turned into a contract. And the voicemail, Georgia's one party consent. New York is two. It's his voice, his words, his intent. You can play a very short clip to establish exactly what you say it establishes. No more. 10 seconds. 8 to 12, she said. You're not scoring a trailer, you're corroborating a sentence. Keep your voice even, let the paper do the talking. I'm not showing medical anything, I said. I won't weaponize a body. Good, she said, and her shoulders came down a fraction. Stay on money and promises. You say what he said and what he wrote and what you sent. No diagnoses, no speculation, no paternity gossip, no everyone knows. You only speak to what you can prove. I nodded. The rhythm of it calmed my bones. I don't need to shout if the paper can sit still. And Naomi, she added, you can be gracious and still be exact. Juries and ballrooms, remember who kept their verbs clean. Miles sat in the lobby with Nova and a bag of apple slices. He looked up when I came out like the hallway might have taken something from me. I shook my head, no damage, all green, then handed him the list Adrian had written in block letters. Transfer printout, original +1 copy. Handwritten note, laminated sleeve. Voicemail clip, start at you're investing in us. Leave medical at home. Don't repeat insults, say thank you first. Say thank you, I asked. Start on grace, Adrian had said. It puts the knives away until you need them. We built a plan like a scaffold. Miles booked a limo not to peacock but to control our arrival and exit and to give the girls a quiet place to melt down if the ballroom did what ballrooms do. We practiced an exit phrase. If I said, we forgot the raincoats, we left, no debate. Evelyn agreed to sit 3 rows back with the girls during the toasts and take them out. The second grown-ups started throwing sentences as weapons. We walked the contents of my clutch like a luxury store inventory. Lipstick, powder, tiny tangerine for sudden blood sugar, compact printouts in plastic sleeves. The note tucked into a pocket my mother had sewn in herself. A thumb drive with the voicemail clip labeled for when words LIE. At night, we rehearsed lines not because I needed theater, but because gaslighting had taught my tongue bad habits. Miles played every role, Damon's charm, Serena's polite blade, the guest who thinks empathy is a spectator sport. What if someone says you're bitter? I'll say I'm busy. What if someone asks why now? Because now invited me. Evelyn groaned at that. Lord, just don't sermon if you can testify. On Friday, a DM arrived from a handle with 3 numbers and a sunflower emoji. At Morrison Bridalt, he promised me the same things he promised you. I won't be your friend tonight, I can't afford that. But I won't be his pawn either. Check the shared cloud. He's careless. I stared at it long enough to feel my pulse in my teeth. Miles read over my shoulder and said very quietly, don't click anything that smells like trap. It's her, I said, or someone close enough to her to know how he makes a promise sound like dessert. The link was to a folder with a familiar nickname, Hail Day, the kind of shared cloud you make when you want florists and planners and speeches to live in the same digital pantry. I expected it to be locked. It wasn't. Inside, contracts, seating charts, a run of show with timestamps and corsage notes, and a line that read acknowledgement of old mistakes. Cue camera to back left table 27. My breath stuttered. I clicked on Toast Groom V5. DocX. There it was in black type and Damon's habit of double spaces after periods. I thought love was about endurance, someone who would stick around even when she couldn't give me a legacy. Real love produces. Produce, as if a woman were a factory with quarterly goals. Miles squeezed the back of my neck. That's not a toast, he said. That's an alibi with flowers. There was a PDF from the planner with a map of the ballroom and little camera icons sketched on it. One sat like an eye above the area marked Table 27. An arrow beside it said, Pan at Legacy Line. The caption beneath, we want to capture a gracious reaction. Gracious reaction. They'd storyboarded my humiliation and written me apart. I sat back and let the fury move through, a wave that rose and receded without washing me out to where I used to drown. We keep our plan, I said. No improvising. Miles nodded. Receipts, he said. Not revenge, I finished. Saturday we packed like we were going to war and a picnic at the same time. Evelyn ironed the green dress until it could have stood up by itself. Aria refused her shoes on principle. Nova negotiated for 2 barrettes and then wore 3. Lark traveled with a toy frog whose opinions were numerous. The limo idled outside like a promise with upholstery. As we stepped into the hall, my phone buzzed again. Same sunflower icon. At Morrison Bridalt, last thing. He asked the DJ to open the family remarks to the floor. They're betting you won't stand up. Don't let them narrate you. I looked at the girls, at Miles, at the envelope tucked where my pulse lives. I won't, I typed back. We took the elevator down. The doors opened to a lobby that smelled like money had feelings. Miles kissed my knuckles and said, green looks like an answer, and we walked toward a day that had already tried to write my lines for me. Cocktail hour sounded like silverware practicing its vowels. The Caldwell had imported a garden, orchids on stems like decisions, hedges trimmed into obedience, light that made people prettier than they'd been at breakfast. Our limo door breathed shut behind us like a secret that agreed to keep itself. We checked in with a woman whose headset looked like authority. She glanced at the girls, yellow dresses, serious faces, and performed the tiny grimace people do when confronted with children in rooms built for grown-ups pretending. "Table 27, she chirped, circling it on a map. Back by the service doors, exactly where the run of show had promised to stash the old mistake. Evelyn took the girls to admire the ice sculpture that looked like a swan trying not to cry. Miles and I drifted to the edge of the cocktail crowd as if we'd been invited by accident. Laughter pushed itself up past the centerpieces. In the corner, a videographer panned across the room, lens pausing on polished faces like a blessing that required a deposit. Damon basked by the bar with his best man, Vic, in a tux he'd rented from Ego. Serena floated, back straight, dress making promises it did not have to keep. For half a second her eyes found mine, and I saw the DM version of her, the woman who wanted the truth but couldn't afford it wholesale. She nodded once, I nodded back. We were not allies, we were witnesses. "Naomi," a woman said behind me, voice buttered and dangerous. She had the posture of money and the kind of smile that could file for a restraining order against empathy. "You look well." "I am," I said, which was both true and unhelpful. "And these are..." Her eyes zipped to the girls like drones. "My daughters," I said. "Area Nova Lark." "Triplets," she said, with the same tone you use for meteor shower. "How productive." Miles' hand found the small of my back. "We prefer blessed," he said, smiling without opening any doors. The ballroom doors opened like a curtain call. People surged in, found their names, adjusted their importance. We found table 27, the airlock between the kitchen and the story, and sat. A server smiled at the girls and slid extra rolls to their plates as if carbs could hold back weather. Up front, a spotlight hardened. Vic took the mic first, jokes about Damon's hustle, his grind, his vision when nobody else saw it. The crowd laughed like they'd rehearsed. He warmed them like a chef does bread, toss, catch. Then he went where the leaked draft went. "And look at him now," Vic said, palm up toward the couple. "Legacy in motion, the kind of man who finds the woman who can multiply what he brings." His eyes flicked fast and mean toward the back tables. "Real love produces." Produce. The word did what it had been designed to do, land and echo. At table 27, Evelyn's mouth flattened into a line so straight it could cut fabric. Arya asked if produce meant cucumbers. "Sometimes," I whispered. Damon followed, of course. He thanked family, vendors, God himself. He told a story about teenage Damon washing cars in August, about believing before anyone else would. On cue, a camera eye blinked above us, pivoted left. I could feel it hunting for a gracious reaction. I gave it my side profile and the mercy of blinking when I wanted to stare it down. "Serena taught me," Damon said. Voice siruped, "that love isn't just sticking around, it's building, it's fruitfulness." He wrapped an arm around her waist, and a polite collective awe went up like a choir instructed by invoice. Serena took the mic last, voice soft but not small. "We've walked the long way," she said. "We've learned that some stories begin before you know how to read them right." Her smile was expensive, her eyes weren't. It takes courage to let go of what doesn't grow. The room made that agreeable hum people make when they hear a sentence that sounds like a thesis. Serena's gaze slid back toward our quadrant. Flick, flinch, recover. "And tonight," she said, "we celebrate a love that's fruitful." Evelyn coughed once into her napkin. Miles rested 2 fingers against my wrist where a pulse was trying to win a race nobody else had entered. I kept my face on neutral, neither invitation nor apology, because Adrian's advice had set up house in my head. Start on grace. Keep your verbs clean. Dinner descended in courses with names like something and something else. The girls negotiated peas like diplomats. Servers swept like weather. At table 27, a woman in pearls leaned over to say, "I admire your courage, dear," which is what people say when they'd like you to absorb their discomfort for them. "Thank you," I said. "We're just having dinner." The planner, sleek, everywhere ghosted past our table, checked the sightline from the camera to my face, then adjusted a fern like the plant had embarrassed her. Above us, the little camera icon in my head blinked again. Pan at legacy line. I looked up, there it was, the actual rig, a discreet eye on a truss. It did not blink, but I felt blinked at. "Raincoats," Miles murmured our agreed exit phrase, a handrail offered. "Not yet," I said. The words tasted like steel left in a glass of water. Glasses chimed in synchronized choreography. The DJ slid back to the mic with the grin of a man whose livelihood depends on pretending every room is happy. Okay, beautiful people, he crooned, voice dipped in velvet and management. We've heard from our best man and our radiant bride. Before we moved to dancing, the couple wanted to open the floor for a few brief remarks from family or dear friends. If anyone would like to share a blessing, keep it to 1 minute, y'all, now's your chance. A hush that wasn't a hush fell. You could hear knives pretending not to be weapons. The camera above table 27 nudged left, settling into its mark like a cat on a windowsill. Naomi, Evelyn said, not a question. Yeah, I answered, and my voice came out steady like it had rehearsed with God. I stood, smoothed the green dress that felt like an answer, and felt 100 phones lift, lenses blooming like nocturnal flowers. Miles' hand slid off my wrist and onto my spine, a pressure saying go without pushing. I picked up my clutch, the little weight of facts, and started toward the light that had been choreographed to catch a different woman. There's a way a microphone feels in your hand when you've been the one talked over. It's heavier, like it remembers everybody else's fingerprints. I smiled first because Adrian said to. I thanked the planner, the florist, the aunties who wrangled toddlers like saints. I thanked the couple for inviting me to witness their joy. Start on grace. Adrian had said, so I did. I won't stay long, I said, voice steady as a countertop. I just want to bless the beginning you're celebrating with a short story about an old beginning. 6 years ago, when Damon and I were married, he had an idea for a second shop. I believed in that idea. A polite rustle. The camera above table 27 angled toward my face like a hawk deciding if I was edible. I believed so much, I continued, that I sent $18,750 from my savings to the LLC that would house that idea. I wrote capital contribution in the memo line, because words matter. I lifted a clear sleeve. The screen by the band, meant for slideshows of baby pictures and beach engagements, obliged the planner's gesture and displayed the transfer printout in ugly bank font. You could feel the room trying to decide if it was allowed to read. Damon stood halfway up. Naomi, he said, teeth showing. Not now. I'm not discussing you, I said, calm. I'm discussing paper. I held up the second sleeve, his handwriting in blue ink. Note he'd signed at our sanded kitchen table. Thanks for staking us, our future starts now. D. Sometimes, I said, promises are poems. Sometimes they're contracts that rhyme. A murmur, the back tables read faster. Up front, someone coughed into money. And because memory is slippery, I said pleasantly, here is 10 seconds of Damon's own voice from the night that money moved. I nodded at the DJ. He looked at the planner. The planner looked at the couple. Serena's chin tipped, a queen's permission or a woman too tired to argue with the script anymore. The DJ pressed play. Damon's voice poured through the room, warm as August. You're investing in us, in our future. I won't forget it. I love you. The clip ended before the room could make up its collective mind about empathy. I set the mic by my hip the way you do a knife when you don't need it anymore. That's all, I said. Just receipts, not revenge. Vic laughed, one bright, brittle bark that sounded like a glass breaking in the kitchen. Everybody invests, he said loud. Who cares? Creditors, I said without looking at him. Courts, and anyone who thinks women shouldn't have to call gifts what men rebrand after the fact. Damon found a smile with serrated edges. Naomi, this is tacky. Tacky is a seating chart that puts me by the service doors, I said, still pleasant. Tacky is a run of show with a line that reads acknowledgement of old mistakes. Cue camera to back left, table 27. I lifted my eyes to the rig. Your cameraman hit his mark. 1,000 tiny inhales. The planner went pale beneath perfect contour. The bandleader looked at his charts as if notes might protect him from nouns. I tucked the sleeves away and kept my voice in the key of Sunday morning. If you're wondering why I bring it up now, it's because I was invited now. Public narrative invited public fact. I wish you both peace and prosperity, I mean that. I could have stopped there, I almost did. Then the small generosity that had med me a sunflower sent a nudge through my ribs. I glanced at Serena. She held her flute like it owed her money. One more thing, for the sake of full context. I lifted a final page, an email thread with a subject line that read fertility financing options and Damon's own signature stamped under his typed name. I didn't read the body. I didn't say why he'd asked or what he got. I just let the dates and the letterhead sit in the air like the weather. This correspondence, I said, is not mine. It was shared with me by someone who didn't want a stranger's lie to be her centerpiece. It shows that, while I was being called unproductive, Damon was researching loans for a process he told me he didn't need. Make of that what you will. I will not elaborate. Serena's smile didn't fall off her face so much as step down and leave. She looked at the paper. Damon's profile like it was a painting she'd been pretending to like. The flute ran out of fingers. It skated off her grip and shattered at her feet, champagne seeding the parquet like a sudden rain. "Turn it off," Damon told the videographer, voice lower than I'd heard since our worst nights. The videographer didn't seem to know where off was. "Naomi," the bride's mother said, rising halfway, pearls quivering like accusations. "This is a celebration." "It still can be," I said, and meant it more than anyone wanted me to. A toddler up front clapped once, confused but committed. The DJ cleared his throat. Beside the bar, Vic began to edge toward a side door, head down, tucks a size too loud for the exit. Evelyn's gaze pinned him for a heartbeat like a butterfly to felt. He kept moving anyway. Damon took a step, then another, toward me. The room's temperature swung. Miles did not move, but the entire line of his body said, "Try it." I lifted the mic again, just enough. "I'm finished," I said. "Truly, thank you for letting me correct the record you tried to write around me." I set the microphone on the edge of the stage like a clean dish. My fingers felt like they belonged to a woman with a different past. Phones hovered. People remembered their manners and forgot them again. Serena's voice came from a place without acoustics. "Is that email dated before your legacy line or after?" Damon didn't answer. The silence learned how to hum. Then three things happened at once. A server slipped on champagne and righted herself with balletic defiance. The planner snapped her fingers at the DJ as if a song might glue the moment back together. And a man in a navy suit I didn't know slid a business card across the lip of the stage toward my clutch without looking up. Martinez and Lee, LLP Civil Litigation. Unjust enrichment contract claims. Serena took a breath like a diver who'd finally seen the bottom. Her eyes found mine, clear now in a way that had nothing to do with tears. "Don't leave," she said. "Please." And the room, which had come to watch me swallow, waited to see whether I would. "Don't leave," Serena said, voice steady because her hands weren't. The ballroom had started pretending again, music up, lights warmer, waiters restoring the illusion with towels and choreography, but the center of the room was a bruise. Miles looked at me. I nodded. We followed Serena through a side door to a terrace where the ocean practiced sounding like money. She held the railing with the focus of a gymnast. "I sent the DMs," she said without ceremony. Sunflower emoji. Shared cloud. I didn't have courage for more. "I figured," I said. "Thank you." She laughed, one short sound that didn't find a place to land. "Don't thank me. I invited a woman to my wedding so my man could humiliate her on schedule. That's not ignorance, that's participation." "You adjusted," I said. "Sometimes that counts as courage too." Her eyes went glass clear. "He told me you'd come to make a scene, that you wanted attention, that you couldn't let go." She shook her head at her own old beliefs. "I didn't know he wrote your humiliation into the run of show. I didn't know I was the prop." Behind us, the door opened a crack. Evelyn poked her head out, assessed the air like a weather witch, and withdrew. Miles moved to a point where he could see me and the room at once, a photographer's triangulation. Serena turned a ring around her finger. "I'm not asking you for advice," she said. "I'm asking for name." "A name." "The lawyer," she said. "The woman who put facts aren't rude on her wall in my head while you were talking." "Adrian," I said. "Pro bono clinic on 43rd. She'll send you to a firm if you need wait. Martinez and Lee left me a card tonight." Serena's laugh this time was a cut that didn't bleed. "Of course they did." She dug in her clutch, came out with a folded piece of paper and pressed it into my hand. "Planner contract. Emails. Proof I didn't write your part." "You don't have to." "I know," she said. "I want to, not for you, for whatever I call myself when I stop being the woman who cooperated." The door opened again. Vic stepped onto the terrace and saw us. Greed and calculation fought for his face. He pivoted to leave. Serena's voice stopped him cold. "Victor," she said, crisp enough to slice. "You're going to send Naomi. Whatever you signed, when you and Damon decided her money, looked better in a wallet than an account. Or I will send the planner's emails to every client who thinks your tux is honesty." Vic swallowed. His eyes did math. "I'll be in touch," he muttered. "No," Serena said. "You'll be in writing." We didn't hug. We weren't there yet. She went back inside, shoulders squared, a woman walking into a room that was about to see her without the makeup. We left. The limo smelled like leather and relief. The girls were asleep in a tangle of yellow and frog. Evelyn took off her shoes and let the day end on purpose. "Was that revenge?" I asked, not looking at Miles. "No," he said. "That was weather finally remembering its forecast." The next weeks tried to act normal and failed. A gossip site ran a headline as subtle as a siren. Clients peeled off Damon's chain like decals in heat. The videographer's footage malfunctioned. The planner's public page changed hands. Vic emailed me at 2:11 a.m. with a PDF. Addendum, profit share and capital transfer, the part where wallet had been translated into legalese. He attached a sworn statement. Naomi Brooks provided $18,750 for the second location. Damon instructed me to route funds to a personal account to maintain a clean LLC. Tasha showed up at Gather with a coffee and a bruise of apology. "He sent me 500 for your number," she said before hello. "I sent it. I hated myself. Tell me where to test if the truth needs it." "Sit," I said. "Eat, then talk." Adrian filed a narrow complaint. Unjust, enrichment, and promissory estoppel, names that felt like spells if you said them right. Martinez and Lee signed on as co-counsel, all teeth and stationary. We did depositions under cheap ceiling tiles. I wore the green dress like armor and answered in verbs. Damon tried charm first, then fog, then fury. Paper didn't blink. "You painted me as a gift," I said in the conference room that smelled like coffee and chloride. "But your handwriting learned to contract. Your voice learned to promise. Judges love literacy." He said nothing useful. His lawyer said context, so often the word lost meaning. We didn't touch medical. We didn't touch paternity. We touched money and notes and the planner's acknowledgement of old mistakes. Cue camera to back left. When someone asked me how I felt at the wedding, Adrian objected calls for speculation, and I fell in love with the law again for 12 seconds. We didn't go to trial. People who live by image settle in rooms far from cameras. The number slid across the table in a folder as beige as apology. Mid-six figures. Enough to college fund 3 childhoods. Enough to pay off tax arrears and put 6 months' payroll in a cushion labeled sleep. Enough to fund 20 microgrants so women didn't have to choose between a lawyer and a light bill. "No NDA on the fact of a payment," Adrian said, reading as if she were hungry. "Only on the number. That's as clean as it gets." I looked at Miles, then at Evelyn, then at my reflection in the conference room glass. "We'll accept," I said, "on one condition." Adrian arched an eyebrow. "I want a line added," I said. "No one in Damon's camp calls my investment a gift again in any forum that can hear them." 2 days later, someone revised the beige. The line went in. I signed with a pen that didn't shake. We did not celebrate with a vacation. We celebrated with infrastructure. We replaced the vent hood for real. We fixed the E in Evelyn's just because. We opened Gather Grants with a website. Miles built on a Sunday between naps. $5,000 microgrants for women leaving marriages and starting businesses. Applications asked for a story and a budget. We didn't ask for shame. We gave the first 3 awards in cashier's checks on a folding table. A woman who made candles cried on my sleeve. A woman who repaired lawnmowers gave us a hug that rearranged my bones. A woman who cooked tamales signed her name like she'd forgotten people ever asked her to. Local news called. We said yes with boundaries. I talked about receipts and community, and how the internet loves a downfall, but it also loves a rebuild if you feed it right. The grocery pilot turned into shelf space on 2 aisles. Mama saw her handwriting, "Just add lemon," in a store that once asked her to leave after counting the ones in her wallet and called it policy. Time. The only honest narrator did what it does. The girls grew into their names. Aria sang her serial. Nova announced her opinions with case law. Lark watched everything and wrote it down in drawings and frowns. Evelyn taught them to stir without flipping a pan. Miles taught them how to frame a story with your feet planted. The internet moved on. It always does. Damon went quiet in public. A cousin of a friend sent a photo once. Him in a polo at a shop without his name on the invoice. I didn't save it. Serena texted twice, once with a photo of a signed retainer, once with a porch view, and the caption learning the difference between peace and silence. I sent back a lemon emoji and a website link to Gather Grants. She sent a sunflower. 5 years later, the stage in Denver smelled like hot lights and nerves. 500 women with name badges and lives pressed into the chairs looked at me like they had better things to do than be lied to. I told them a story with verbs and paper. I said the line that had become my spine. "Receipts," I said, "not revenge." They clapped the way people clap when they hear a sentence that tells the truth without asking permission. Offstage, Miles waited with the girls in dresses they'd picked because pockets. Evelyn sat in the front row and clapped on the 2 and 4 like a choir. When I stepped into the wings, a volunteer handed me a note folded in the shape middle school teaches you when you're brave and not yet old enough to know it. "He asked me to give you this," she whispered. He didn't want to interrupt. I unfolded it. The handwriting was a teenager's, new to certainty, earnest as a prayer. "Miss Naomi, I saw you on YouTube. I'm 14 now. I remember lemon bars. Can we talk?" Owen, the air shifted the way it does right before a storm decides whether it's coming in or moving on. I could see the doorway where the volunteer had come from, a boy-shaped shadow just beyond it, longer now, careful with his own name. Miles' hand found mine. The girls pressed in like weather. Evelyn's face turned toward the wings as if she could hear the note from there. "Do you want to go?" Miles asked, soft. I looked down at the paper, then up at the slice of hallway, then back at the life that had learned how to hold itself. "Yes," I said. Let's meet him halfway.